What's up, everyone? This is Rage MMA with Classic MMA Sports, here to bring you the very first video on the channel, finally. And what a fight to get started with. Boy, am I pumped. Aren't you guys pumped? We got one of the greatest rematches in MMA history. If there's anything you want in a rematch, this is the one, boys. This is the one. Now, I'm not going to talk about a lot of fights on the card. Mainly going to speak on the main event, obviously, and then the co-main event, and then I'm going to give a few pointers about the fights under the card. But yeah, overall, I am very, very excited about what's about to go down. So let's talk a little bit about the first encounter with Izzy and Whitaker. So I've been hearing, the reason why I wanted to do this video kind of late, or very late rather, is because I wanted to kind of read both fighters. I kind of wanted to see where their head was at, because I was going to be breaking this down. So I wanted to get a very, very intricate and accurate as possible perspective of where they were at mentally. And honestly, the past few days, I love what I saw. So on Izzy's side, you have a fighter who feels like he has to prove himself again. Because usually when we see rematches, they're kind of bland. They're kind of either the same fighters, or the champion just doesn't have no one else to fight, and then the UFC throws him a fighter and said, hey, let this guy keep you busy, and then until we find somebody else. And then if he wins, it's a big shock. We can make money and you guys can fight again. But that isn't the case with this fight right here. Izzy is fighting a whole different fighter. He's Robert Whitaker. He's the same guy, but he's a different fighter. And I think that's a very, very great ingredient to an intriguing rematch. I have to be honest. Izzy is one of my favorite fighters in MMA right now. But he said something that kind of was weird to me. It sounded kind of corny. He said that, when he was fighting Jan and he was on the bottom, he got kind of bored. That kind of bothered me, because I have a feeling that Whitaker is going to utilize more wrestling in this fight. So I know that Whitaker isn't as big and as strong as Jan. I get that. But if Whitaker was able to control Izzy on the ground, which is very hard for any 185er to do, if not done correctly, is Izzy just going to lay there and be bored? So the thing that kind of made me more comfortable about the fight was, in the UFC Embedded episodes, Izzy also mentioned that he's back to being a kid again. He's back to being that hungry student wanting to learn everything and soak everything in and take advantage and use it in the fight. So that excites me. But we also have a history of champions getting bored in fights. Anderson Silva, Demetrius Johnson, the list goes on. And you as a regular person might say, well, how do they get bored? This is a high championship fight under a lot of circumstances. Well, because it's abnormal to you, but this is the norm for them. Anywho, in the lead up to the fight, both Rob and Izzy have admitted that, Rob was emotional in the first fight, and that's one of the reasons why he didn't perform well. But if I was Izzy, which I bet he's not, and if I was Rob, which I bet he's not, I think he did it to sell the rematch, which I don't care really, because I believe it's going to be a great fight anyway. But I believe they're putting a lot of emphasis on, what Robert Whitaker was going through mentally. Here's why. If you look at the first fight, the commentators and a lot of breakdowns that I've seen, they said that Robert Whitaker charged in. He blitzed Izzy. He wanted to take his head off. I don't think that's necessarily the case. Because if you look at what Robert did, he did a lot of the stuff that he did in his past career. And you have to remember, too, Robert Whitaker comes from a karate background. What do karate fighters do a lot? In and out, in and out, in and out, you know? I think Robert's problem was, and Robert even admitted this in the interviews, was that he got too complacent. He didn't work on his skills because he was getting by with them, you know? He had the classic wars with Romero. Romero doesn't display, you know, crafty striking or tricky striking, but he has instincts, you know? He can throw a flying knee or a heavy hand within the blink of an eye in a split of a second, so that's what makes him dangerous. So Robert's style was able to, you know, cope with that. But when a fighter like Izzy came around, who was just so high level as far as the striking department is concerned, his style was outdated. He felt like he didn't need to work on his striking because that's what he's known for until Izzy came around. So if you're a Robert Whittaker fan, whether you like Izzy or not, you have to thank Izzy for coming around. If it wasn't for Izzy, Robert Whittaker wouldn't have stepped up his game. So my evidence in the first fight is, yes, Rob kept darting in, but he kept using fairly the same moves. He didn't switch it up. One of the ways to beat Israel Adesanya is to overwhelm his nervous system. You know, get him worrying about 5 to 7 to 8 different things if you can at the same time. If you don't do that, Izzy's just going to have fun with you. He's just going to sit back, collect data, pick his shots, and then next thing you know, he's moving in for the kill. Okay? One thing that I did notice about the first fight was Izzy showed signs of recording on Whittaker, and Whittaker did not adapt. There was strikes, blitzes, head kicks that Rob was going for that he eventually started missing. Whether Izzy invaded or, you know, just backed up, he missed. I think that should have been a sign for him to change up his game, mix up his feints, and do something different. I don't know if he wanted to, but even if he wanted to, he didn't have nothing else. Because like he was saying, you know, he got complacent with his style, so he just used what he had, and that wasn't enough on that night. Another thing I want to talk about is that Izzy is very deceiving with his range because he has incredible body control. There's a lot of theories of where he's got that from. But all in all, he has very, very good body control to where he can generate power in his hooks in places where the average fighter is very vulnerable. So you could be right in front of Izzy where you think he's not going to generate much power because he's so close to you. But when he bends back and he puts himself in a vulnerable position to bait you in, and you think that you have him, you actually don't. And next thing you know, you're staring at the lights for some people if you put yourself in the fire. Another thing I noticed about Izzy is that Izzy's defense is kind of unique in a way. You know, I noticed that not just with Rob, but with other fighters, I noticed that he blocks kicks and punches with his armpit. I think he utilizes, you know, how tall he is with that. You know, he'll throw his hands up or he'll throw a shot, and as soon as the fighter throws a kick or a punch, Izzy catches it with his armpit. It's kind of weird. I don't know if that's like a thing in kickboxing, but I don't see it much in UFC. I know about kickboxing, but I don't watch much of it. I haven't even watched Izzy's past kickboxing fights, honestly. But yeah, so, Anywho, I'm not going to break down exactly what happened because obviously, by now you guys have seen multiple breakdowns if you're a fan of the sport like I am. So I think you have a pretty good idea of what happened. But what I do want to mention is I don't believe that it was Robert's ego. I don't think it was, his emotions. I don't think it was any of that. I think it was complacency. I think that Robert got comfortable and he didn't have nothing for Izzy, and Izzy was the better fighter. And that's what makes this rematch so intriguing, is because I believe Robert Whittaker is a whole different fighter now, not just with emotions, but with skill set. And we'll see what he does with it. Now, Izzy is one of my favorite fighters in the UFC right now, as I previously mentioned. But every man's beatable, okay? The public treats these guys like gods, but they're not gods, okay? They are human. They bleed like everybody else. So even though Izzy is my favorite fighter, I am not blinded or naive to his faults. And honestly, based on, what we have, Izzy's fighting is getting fairly predictable. I won't say it's clearly predictable, but it's getting fairly predictable. In other words, if he doesn't change it soon, I'm afraid it's going to catch up to him. Maybe not with Whittaker. See, the thing that's been saving Izzy with his style, even though it's fairly predictable, is that it's his wittiness, his ability, and this probably comes from experience and wisdom, but his ability to make decisions, hard decisions, and good decisions under so much pressure is what's been saving him. Also, his reflexes. Like I said, he has incredible body control. So when you look at his arsenal, which is a variety of things, and then you look at his wittiness, and then you look at his body control, the dude has amazing, incredible reaction time, man, under severe circumstances. When everything is on the line, Izzy can make good decisions within the split of a second. While the average person is having anxiety or wondering if they're going to do it good or do it right, Izzy just snaps and makes the decision. So even when guys are reading him, he's still able to evade the punch or the kick because he's so good at that, in my opinion. And Izzy's style will never get 100% predictable. I don't think nobody's style will ever. But, sorry, that was my phone. But I think it can eventually catch up to him. Maybe it will in this fight. I don't know. You just never know with MMA. So let's talk about those flaws, and let's talk about what I think Robert can do to beat the champ. I don't think Robert's going to dominate him. I think he can win 3 rounds. I think it's fairly possible if he brings the right skill set, he could definitely win 3 rounds. The question is if he could do that in a dominant fashion. Okay? But let me play coach for a sec. If I was in Robert Whittaker's corner and he was asking me what he should do based on his skill set, first thing I would say is that in the striking department, Izzy has this behavioral pattern to where if you throw punches or kicks, he backs straight up. Now, if you're ever in boxing or kickboxing, your coach will tell you, hey, don't back straight up, on the center line. That's wrong. That's technically wrong, which it is. But Izzy uses it to bait in his opponents, right? If he's on the center line, it will bait his opponents to hit him because he's wide open and he's easy to hit. The thing that happens is they take that bait all the time, and like I said, based on Adesanya's experience, wittiness, and decision-making, he's not there when they throw a punch or a kick, right? Like if the fighter knows enough to know that you're not in position, he's not going to throw a punch at all. But Izzy puts himself in the fire and he lets them throw because why? He's collecting data, right, for himself, And he's also getting you to, throw all your energy out so that you can miss and he can capitalize it, later on in the fight. So what I would do is I wouldn't let Izzy take the center. If you look back on Izzy's fights and you even watch his interviews, you'll notice that Izzy always takes the center, of the cage. Why? Because when you strike, he needs room to back up, right? He needs room to back up and evade your shots. So what Robert needs to do is Robert needs to pressure him against the cage, and Izzy might assume that he's pressuring him against the cage to take him down, and Robert can use that to mix it up. But really, you should push him against the cage to get off your shots. Because if his back is against the cage, or he doesn't have enough space between him and the cage to evade your shots, that'll take away one of his most valuable weapons. And yeah, Izzy could step to the side. Izzy can, still evade punches to a certain extent, but it'll make him feel uncomfortable. Because then he's going to have to adapt, right? And then if you add that plus all the other weapons you're taking away from him, those things add up, especially in a 5-round fight. Another thing I want to mention about the striking is that just know how much body control that Izzy has. Every position that a fighter is usually vulnerable in, Izzy is strong in. So if it looks like he's in a position to where he can't generate power or he can't clean clock you, most likely he can. And I feel like that's one of the things that happened with Rob in the first fight, is he underestimated Izzy's body control and Izzy's deception of his range. So I would look out for that. The last thing I would like to mention about the striking is I feel like Robert has to force Izzy to react to him rather than Izzy forcing Rob to react to him. Because you have to remember, if this is a 5-round fight, which based on what we've seen, this can very possibly go 5 rounds. And if Robert spends 5 rounds trying to react to Izzy and watch out for his traps, not only is it going to be a long night for him, but he's going to lose the fight. He will definitely lose the fight if that is the case. Robert has to put pressure on Izzy and do his thing and let the judges know that he is here and he wants to win. We had some weird judging in Texas recently, so he has to be dominant if it goes to a decision. So let's talk about the wrestling, okay? I feel like the wrestling is one of the big questions in this fight. Is Whitaker going to use it? If he does, how effective is it going to be? What does he learn new? Is he going to be able to get Izzy down, keep Izzy down? What I would recommend for Whitaker is that if you're a 185-pounder, you are not taking Izzy down. And if you do, he's not going to stay down. My thing is that I'm referencing this in regards to the fence. Izzy has amazing takedown defense when it comes to the fence. And a lot of fighters try to take him down there. Why? Because, if you put a fighter against the fence, that's one of the roughest places to be, if you're a great wrestler and you know how to utilize it, like a Kamaru Usman or a Khabib or Magomedov. But if I was Robert, I would be working on some power double legs, man, or some sambo, some judo throws. Izzy, because Izzy has incredible body control, you need to put him into a position to where he's flying in the air, where none of his limbs, because when you take somebody down, right, when you go to take somebody down, they use their hands to keep balance and not going all the way down. This is off of the cage. This is in the center. They use their hands, they use the hook of the arms and all these other things. But if you execute a power double leg where he's in the air and you go to slam him, or you execute a judo throw where he's in the air and you slam him, that takes away his weapon of body control to stuff your takedown. Okay, so that's what I would recommend as far as the wrestling. If Robert's going to take him down, he needs to not take him down at the fence, because with Izzy's body control and his understanding of leverage and the evidence we've seen thus far, I feel like no 185-pounder on earth right now can take Izzy down against the fence. If Robert wants to mix it up with his strikes and his wrestling, for example, I would recommend that, if he wants to push him against the fence with a double jab, or, feints and, get his back against the fence, if he grapples him against the fence and he wants to take him down against the fence, please do not do a BJJ takedown to where Izzy can utilize the fence and his body control to stay on his feet, because he will do that and you will most likely not take him down. And then when you do take him down, he's going to get right back up, and you're going to waste your energy on a takedown that's going to catch up with you later on down the road. If you're going to take him down on the fence, I would do a full body, what's that takedown called? It skips my mind at the moment. Sorry, guys, but it's where you get the double hooks and you turn as you slam. Again, put him up in the air. And I know this is going to be kind of hard because he's taller than him in some instances, right? But if you're going to take him down, you got to pick him up and slam him, pretty much, whether it's against the fence or it's in the middle of the cage. You got to pick him up and slam him, because if not, he's just going to use his body control, his leverage, and you're not taking him down. You're just not taking him down. You're going to waste your energy, and then he's going to eat you up later in the rounds. So we talked about the strikes. We talked about the wrestling. One other thing that I would coach Robert on is that his mental game. He has to overload Izzy with possibilities and variances. And is he going high, then he goes low? Is he going low and then he's going to go high? Is he going to sway to the right? Is he going to sway to the left? He has to keep Izzy guessing. Now, I don't know if he has that in his arsenal. In the first fight, I feel like he didn't. But based on the way he's talking, it sounds like he has that ability now. It sounds like he's worked on his game and he's got a variety of tools and weapons that he could use. He needs to use everything he got. He needs to keep Izzy guessing at every second of the fight. He can't have Izzy worry about one or two things, because Izzy's going to collect data on those. He's going to adapt, and then once he's got you, he's going to go in for the finish. Izzy is in this point in Izzy's career, he is at such a high level, and he has so much wisdom and experience in this game that you have to, in order to overload his nervous system, you have to have him worrying about multiple things, concern about multiple things in order to overload his nervous system. So that's what I would recommend to Robert Whittaker. Feints, sways, in and out, aim high, go low, look low, go high. Every single thing to keep Izzy guessing. And referring to my point earlier, this is also going to help, Whittaker force Izzy to react to him rather than Whittaker having to react to Izzy. Because you got to remember, he's the champ. Like I said, he's the champ. So Izzy has that advantage. So if this fight goes 5 rounds, like I said, and it's in Texas, you're putting yourself in danger as far as losing the fight on points. Because I don't really think, I think even if Whittaker throws every single thing at him, it's really hard for me to imagine that he would dominate Israel. I think best case scenario, it would be a very, very close fight, But I feel like if he does all these things that I mentioned, he can possibly dominate Izzy if he has it in his tool belt. So let's get on and move on to the co-main event. The Beast versus Bam Bam. If you like a banger, if you like the swing and bang, if you like the just let me bang bro fights, this is the one. You don't want to miss this. Sometimes people say they're going to stand and bang, you know, we get a Derek Lewis versus Ngannou, or, you know, they just end up, one of them ends up taking the other one down, you know. But I don't think that's going to be the case with this fight. I believe that Tai hasn't peaked yet. When I look at him, I see a lot of potential. I feel like he's still growing. I don't think he's peaked yet. He's had some success for himself lately. He's been getting a lot more eyes on him, but I feel like he hasn't peaked yet. I feel like if he peaks, he has more of a chance to beat Derek Lewis. Derek Lewis has a habit of leaning hard on that lead leg to throw his punches. So if Tai can rip his front leg and take that away from him, at the same time avoid any counters that might come his way, I feel like Tai would have a pretty easy night and possibly a very impressive knockout. You know, everybody wants knockout fights. Everybody wants to be, you know, in the highlights until they're the ones who had to sacrifice their bodies to be in the highlight, you know. As far as Derek Lewis, I think Derek just has to be Derek, you know. If Tai isn't doing nothing very technical or tactical, I feel like Derek Lewis's power, his chin, and his instincts are going to get him through this fight and get him through fairly fast. Tai is definitely not, you know, the lightest heavyweight, so I don't expect him to, maybe be light on his feet like a Ciryl Gane or, anything like that. But I do expect him to be aware of where he's at all times, from kicking range to boxing range. Is he in range? Is he out of range? Is he safe? Is he not safe? Because Derek Lewis is one of those fighters where if at any point you don't know where you're at and he capitalizes on it, you're going to sleep. Plain and simple. Whether this guy hits you on the ground, against the cage in a clinch, in a Muay Thai clinch, or even just darting in, not only does it hurt, but you could either possibly get rocked and not be the same the rest of the fight, or you'll go to sleep. He has that type of power. Nevertheless, I'm really excited about this fight. I have a feeling that one of these guys is going to get knocked out of the night, and it's going to be a great thing to see. So let's get to my pointers about the rest of the card. So if you're a City Kickboxing fan, this is the card for you, most definitely. The very first fighter on the card, I believe, is Izzy's teammate, Mike Diamond. That's the teammate that he addresses as Blood Diamond. Both of the guys that are fighting are very, very exciting. Apparently, from what Izzy says, Blood Diamond is wild and he's unpredictable, so don't miss that one. That one sounds like it's going to be great. Also, we got Carlos Ulberg on the card from City Kickboxing. I forgot the guy's name that he's fighting. I've never seen him in the UFC or other promotions, but he doesn't have that many fights from what I've seen, and there's not really much tape on him. So I really believe that the UFC is trying to break in Carlos a little bit more easier. I don't know why. You know, Carlos is a very, very experienced kickboxer, and I know MMA is different, but we'll see. But in other words, if Carlos wins, I won't be surprised. And if the other guy wins, I will be surprised. But that would be awesome for him, and I would be happy for him. Anywho, forgive me, guys, if I forgot anything on the card. I really didn't want to make this video long, but I'm really, really excited to enjoy the fights. If you have time, or you're trying to kill time before the main card, or to kill time, I'd appreciate it if you'd watch my video, and I'll be sitting and watch with you guys. And if you can, comment down below on what you thought about the fight. I plan on breaking down at least the main event and the co-main event afterwards, so enjoy the fight, be safe, and I'll catch you later. Peace.